Unmute. Alrighty, folks, welcome to the Tuesday live stream. We thought we'd make the point today, as Dustin said, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. That's I sing in a choir, and so 15 minutes is on early is on time, and on time is late. So we get along well already. So this is my first time meeting Dustin in person. I've got John Willis from Special Operations Equipment, Dustin from Wazoo Gear Company, and I'm Nicole Sauce from Living Free in Tennessee. And I didn't know who or what a Dustin was until John said, "Hey, we got to get this dude on the show." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's a great idea." After I checked out your stuff, Dustin, like, tell us who you are and how you came to be on a live stream with John Willis and Nicole Sauce.
I don't know why John wanted me on here. That'd be something he has to answer. But I can do the elevator pitch, between levels 3 and 5. We'll do the quick 30-second pitch. I'm one of the co-owners of Wazoo Gear. Been around for about 10 years. There's another guy whose name is Nick. He's down in Texas. I'm in Colorado. This is where all the operations take place. Got a little warehouse over here and office and a few employees and stuff. And our claim to fame is wearable, functional gear, particularly stuff for the outdoors or adventures or travel. And so that embodies in things like a hat with secret pockets that you can carry cool EDC gear or survival gear or travel gear, necklaces like a fire starter necklace or even knife sharpening necklace that's made out of a cool American-made whetstone, a Vaculite whetstone, a patented belt that also has a pocket with a whole kit that fits inside of it, and a few other kind of things. One of the big ones right now that if anyone ever goes to our website, sorry, we're going to hit you hard with these fire cards. They're just like, figuratively speaking, on fire. They're selling like crazy. They're kind of a new innovative product that has been taken off. So, and our ads have been taken off too. So sorry, if you go to our website, we're going to be hitting you all over the place with those. But
sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, sorry, not sorry.
If it's working, it's working, right?
It's working, yeah.
But you have a real usable product. It's not just nonsense, right? Anybody wearing that thing might find themselves in a position where those items could save their life. A lot of dudes wear a hat. You guys have a good looking hat, but it has functional stuff. And the answer to the reason I wanted you on here is we communicate through social media, but we've occupied the same space before. We did a video together at Overland Expo, and that was a miserable time out there. There was people in mud up to their kneecaps, and your energy was awesome, man. Everybody was just sloshing around, just miserable. And we were just standing there shooting a video in all that muck. And I had a good time. You were super cool to my kid. I have your product. I've owned your product for a long time. And I just want to give my audience access to you and vice versa. We have an audience, and I have a lot of clients who are my audience. So those are vetted customers. And I want to see your company double its footprint, man. I want to see you move out of Colorado and come to Tennessee is what I really want. But I just thought you were a good dude, and it's always been in my head for the last few years. So here we are.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so how did you come up with the idea for your company? Like, what was your journey to get there? Can you tell us your Genesis story?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever told this story publicly. I'll tell my side of the story. But I'll tell the professional version and the personal version. So for me personally, I graduated with a degree in advertising, and thought I was going to go that route, and then realized halfway through school, nope, not going to work for some corporation. Definitely not going to have somebody tell me how I'm supposed to creatively think. I just knew it was going to be a conflict. I knew there was always going to be a rock and a hard place of me wanting to come up with some creative thing, and then the boss man or politics or something get involved. And so I was like, oh, not going to go that way. So I became an outdoor guide, was doing outdoor guiding stuff. And particularly I was in Alaska doing zipline guiding and just living out in the forest. I was living in a hammock. It was incredible in the rainforest there. And I remember there was an incident we had, and the manager put me on suspension for a few days. And he was like, he took me aside. He's like, apologies, this thing happened and I got to put you on suspension. I was like, I understand. And he was so sweet about it and so nice. And then I went on suspension for like 3 days. Well, I went up in the mountains. I was like, cool. All right. Vacation. Went up in the mountains, packed my bag. Also went into town, found a local friend, grabbed some fungus and went in the mountains and had an experience where I was like, I found a tree. There's like this really cool tree by a lake, and stayed there for a few days. And I was burrowed like under this tree, like this root system that had kind of gotten, and I like could live in this under this little tree. It was incredible. Like this tree, it was like a huge like cypress or spruce, probably like 8-10 feet diameter. But I was under there and took mushrooms, and then I was like, I'm living the life. I'm getting paid. I'm doing everything that like checks the boxes. I have a great boss. I'm living in the forest. And I had this conflict. It's not them, it's me. I'm the problem. I'm unemployable. So when I got back from Alaska, I kind of decided like I need to do my own thing. I need to have full responsibility, whatever that looks like, good or bad or ugly, or all the responsibility on the table. And so did kind of start my own company. And at that time, it was paracord bracelets. My mom had bought me like this paracord belt that had put like 150 foot of paracord on it or something. And I love the idea. I grew up, my dad and I made duck calls with paracord and everything like that. And I'd known about paracord from going to gun shows and stuff. That was before it was hot. And but I saw that and I was like, I could do a way better job. Like, cool product, cool concept. You're obviously selling a lot of those, but I have way better design. I can do a way better design than that. And so I did. I started making paracord bracelets, and I started making them. They were calling them survival bracelets. And I didn't think that, I love rope. I love rope a lot, but having rope on your wrist is not a survival bracelet. That's not the priorities of survival. It's not like, if you're out in the wild, make sure you have some rope. Can we pause, Nicole?
Yeah.
No, you're good. Keep going.
Okay.
Keep going.
All right. And so we created, at the time it was just me, and created some little inventions, but buckle that had like a ferrocerium rod in it. And eventually a whole bracelet that had like 18 different survival tools on them, all super functional, all high quality. Like wasn't just a normal Chinese button compass. It was a really high quality Japanese button compass. They can go down to 3 atmospheres. And it was like, I got obsessed with this design. And coincidentally, and then I went and lived on a sailboat. This is in Kima, Texas. And I was going to sail around the world and kind of run this business, collected money in my bank account kind of thing, had this 4-hour work week concept. And so I'm working out of the sailboat, living on the sailboat. And a friend got a hold of me and was like, hey, man, there's this guy doing something real similar to you. And he shared his Facebook page. This is in 2013. And I'm looking, I'm like, oh, this guy's also making paracord bracelets with things integrated into them. I knew the market by that point. I've been kind of in there for a few months and no one else was doing that. So my first reaction was, let me get a hold of him. Well, actually, what I saw is his Facebook group said it was like in Clear Lake, Texas, which is like 15 minutes away from me. So I'm like, there's this guy, some similar to mine, and he's like really close. Yeah, we gotta meet up. I gotta see what's going on. So I didn't initially. I now know this is part of our culture and part of our lifeblood is that my reaction wasn't like, oh, there's a guy doing what I'm doing. I need to take him out. He's competition. I need to avoid it, whatever. I was like, let's go have a beer. And we did. We ended up having a beer. And as we're having a beer, he's like, yeah, I used to work for NASA as an aeronautical mechanical engineer. And I quit that because I just didn't like all that. And now I have my own company and this is what I do. And I'm like, I used to be a marketing guy and I quit that and I'm doing this. But we're looking and like, as I'm showing my design, we both admittedly my design was better than his, but his like Facebook group and his logo and his branding was better than mine. So the engineer had better marketing than the marketing guy, and the marketing guy had better engineering than the engineering guy. So we're like, this is just too convenient. Let's team up. And so that was 2013, and we teamed up as a partnership, and we've been together ever since. And just a few years ago, we moved to Colorado. We were just banging our heads against the wall, trying to get good employees and trying to have an outdoor company in a space. And in Houston, Texas, and particularly in Texas, is a lot of. I mean, I grew up on a small ranch in Texas, and if you have private land, it's great. But if you don't, there's not a lot of public land or availability if you don't have private property. And then we would go out. We had employees. We'd go out and try and teach them some skills, like, oh, okay, let's go to the park and teach you how to start a fire. And then the park ranger comes and there's a dick about it, and we're like, okay, this is just not gonna work. Like, we can't have this. At the time, it was Wazoo Survival Gear. We can't have a survival company and can't take our employees out to go teach them skills and get harassed by the local authorities. Like, they want us here. We're the ones who pick up the trash on the way out. Like, we pick up other people's trash. We should be, wanted in this space. And so we made the big move to come to Colorado a few years ago, and I'm really happy about it. We have great employees up here now, and we're living the life. And that's a quick and dirty story, I think.
So why Colorado versus like Utah or Washington State or something like that?
I checked them all out. Like, we had a big dartboard, kind of metaphorically speaking, and sort of the Venn diagram was manufacturing, because we do a lot of U.S. manufacturing. So one is a place that had good manufacturing locally. We wanted to have a good employee pool. We wanted to have like an outdoor hub, so to speak, has the river rafting in the mountains and things like that. So we went and checked out places like went to Asheville, went to West Virginia, went to Georgia, went to Washington, or went to Oregon, and none of them they just all didn't fit the bill. And then I came up to Colorado, and it did. It just like checked all the boxes. It was all the things. And to be honest, I love the culture, especially in the South. I'm from Texas, the real South, the geographical South. Hopefully the comments, maybe some people can argue with me that, because I want to jump in there. That really screwed me growing up, and they're talking about the South the whole time. And as a 8-year-old, you're looking at the map, and you're like, how is Alabama the South? That's over there. I'm over here. This is South. Anyways, but we love going to Georgia. I go there a couple times a year. I had a lot of friends there in other places in the South. I love the culture, the self-reliance, the people. I don't like the weather, the mosquitoes, the fleas, the ticks. Colorado doesn't have any of that. I've never seen a tick or a flea in Colorado. The mosquitoes are like non-existent, and the weather is like, we got more days of sun than Florida, the Sunshine State. So in the mountains right now, if you were to look out my window, we have like just right over there is the bunch of 14,000 foot mountain peaks that I could be to in like 25 minutes. And then if I want to go river rafting, it's right over there. So, and I'll say this last part about defending it. So before we have to talk about the culture, is that right now where we're on I-25, we're sort of north-south. Over here on the west side, that's kind of where Boulder is. And if you know about Boulder, that's kind of Portlandish area. This is going to be your liberal, your lefties. But what's great is, and that's true, that's how they jive. You're still going to see people on bicycles with masks on riding around to this day. And but over here on the east side of the highway is going to be farmland and agriculture. So you have a east and west, left and right kind of dichotomy happening. And so being in the middle, I think we have to be a little bit libertarian about it. And I get along with a lot of folks here because it's just like they're living side by side. Now it's a blue state for sure. And I think it made it in the news more recently for some of its shenanigans. But as we all know, this is kind of a blue versus red, rural versus urban, small, loud population controlling a lot of like more sparse, lower densely populated areas. So that's my pre-argument.
Your pre-argument for why you're not moving to Camden, Tennessee to be part of the
I love Tennessee too. I love it too.
Yeah, everything will bite you, sting you, lay eggs in you, wants to kill you. We do have mosquitoes. Yeah, we have all of that.
Stuff grows here really well, though.
Yes.
Oh my God! You know what doesn't grow here? Mold. Because I grew up. I was on a sailboat. I grew up in Texas, where you leave something. You have a sweaty shirt, you leave it outside, it's still sweaty the next day. And in Colorado, everything dries. And with my sailboat, I mean, everything rusted, everything molded, and things don't mold here. You leave it out for 15 minutes and it just dries. It's incredible.
That's cool.
And I don't have allergies. I used to have terrible allergies. So that's my thing with Colorado. It is expensive as hell. And everything they say about it being expensive is true.
So you said the company used to be Survival Gear Company. What is it now?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So we started. We've always kind of had this. There's an old slogan called from like Dove. It was like "strong enough for a man, made for a woman," and I love that dichotomy. I love that juxtaposition. And we've always thought of ourselves that way. We've always thought of ourselves as like strong enough for the worst case survival scenario. Like we do not compromise. And I think John, you can agree with this. We built it and they came. It's always this thing is like, okay, we're gonna make a $90 paracord bracelet right now. Other people are selling for $3.20.
Yep.
Put it in the market and it sold. As long as we could be able to demonstrate the value was there. And that's worked for us. So we've always chosen the high road of being on the extreme of quality and customer service and all that. But our stuff is uniquely positioned to also be great for EDC. But so what we're finding though is that with having Wazoo survival gear in the name, we were isolating a lot of people who didn't know. And our whole goal is to kind of like spoon feed with some sugar the idea of self-reliance. Our new tagline is everyday gear, wild capability. And the whole concept is we want to empower folks. We think that our products are an embodiment of empowering individuals to not take on that victim mentality, which is so prevalent right now. And to say, no, like there's always two roads. There's always two decisions you can make in any scenario. Are you going to be the hero or are you going to be the victim? And this one always loses, always loses. This one might not always win, at least not like technically, but this one always loses. So this is always the better choice. And so we want to promote that. And so our whole marketing shift was, how do we continue to bring more people into the fold? If this is our mission, this is our whole vision, this is our why to exist. How do we continue to kind of like pull people in slowly, like, and feed them our idea of just being the heroes of their own story,
especially without them even realize it is happening a lot of time. Yeah. I like it, man.
I love that as an on-ramp to self-reliance, because when you can take care of yourself in the woods, you learn two things. One, how to take care of yourself. Two, how little you really need to survive. And when you wrap your head around that, all of the big scary things that are threatening your way of life, you're like, yeah, but I can live, so I can take this risk. And if I can take this risk, then maybe I'll be better on the other side.
That's cool. Yeah. A lot of it, like the bug out bag thing, right? You got these huge backpacks and the overland trucks, and we all have that stuff. My son I think he was 9 years old, and he was taking this class, a wetsuit survival class. And wetsuit stands for we eat this shit up. So we're at TAC Response, and it's rifles everywhere and TAC guys. And he goes, okay, go get all your gear and bring it in the shop. So everybody unloads their truck. They bring all their stuff in for this inspection. And he's like, now go get in the truck. And they left all that shit in the shop. And he gave them all these Altoid tins. And he goes, this is what you're going to use all weekend long. And they were out. It was sleeting. Rifles were freezing closed. And they were out there. They just did these dug-ins with these reflection. And, it would reflect the heat down in the dugout. And, man, I went out there on Sunday, and they had built this whole little community out there. And no, they didn't have any gear. There was not a sleeping bag. They were putting pine needles down, and it was awesome, man, how little kit that they actually needed out there. And it was miserable out there. And every one of them had a smile. Everybody came home smelling like smoke. And it just shows you what you're capable of if it's in your head, man. You just have to be taught that. You just have to be shown these are the capabilities.
Yeah, I wonder if you guys have thoughts on this. This is something that constantly goes in my mind of how does someone gain that confidence? I think it's a really simple formula to how to be successful in life. It's basically only two steps, is to have belief and then to adopt that as your identity. But the belief part, some people just don't have that belief. I was raised with a great family, and they instilled that belief. Maybe even like in a way of self-fulfilling prophecy. I remember my dad would like brag about me, oh yeah, Dustin, he doesn't care how hard he gets hit in football. He'll just always gets back up. And I don't know if that was true, but I made it was true after I heard my dad bragging behind me or something, or if somebody told me about that. I sure as hell made sure it was true. Like I tried to live up to that. And so they built me that belief system and that confidence that if anyone else has ever done it in the world, I can do it too. But I'm curious if if you didn't have that upbringing, if your upbringing didn't have this belief system built in somehow, how does someone gain that belief and integrate it into their identity?
Well, you find it on the Babylonian rectangle of death, right? This is the worst thing in humanity, but at the same time, it can also be the best, right? We used to have to go to a physical location and rent tapes from Tony Robbins, for instance, right? We can hear it. And when we look at old footage that was black and white, there were dudes saying that even back then, and we just weren't mature enough to let it sink into our heads, right? I had very successful people telling me, hey, if you remove the negativity and you operate out of positivity, a lot more positive stuff. And I was just an asshole young man. And I probably alienated people back then that I now cannot have access to any longer. And it really is true. Like, you can manifest that. You can speak that into existence. And you have guys like Andy Frisella and Harmozy and all them dudes now putting out content. And it just takes a young person to hear that. That's what I'm after. I'm after young people. How do we change? You always hear culture war, right? How do we change the culture war? It's totally doable. And I like to tell people there's another way. I've got a young guy working for me right now, and he's like, how do I know when I go from a hobby or side hustle to a real business? And I said, well, how much money are you making? He's like, I'm not making money yet. Well, we have to figure out what is it you do, and how do we turn that into paying your bills? And the answer, he had a bunch of things. And I said, I just need you to know that there's another way. And that's the government school system, right? They look like jails. They physically look like prisons. And I just need you to know, as a parent who has children or will have children, there is another way. And oftentimes it is simply just opting out. If you take your child who goes to the government school system and just keep him home every Monday. I've just decided that my kid is going to have a 3-day weekend with me every week. Sooner or later, somebody will knock on your door and put you in handcuffs and take you to court. And if you continue to do this, they will put you in jail. When it is also just as simple to go, my child is not participating in your reindeer games anymore. I'm going to take responsibility for the beliefs of my family and how I raise my child. And it simply is just opting out. And a lot of the things that we participate in, we could simply opt out of. We're just not going to do that. I'm not going to eat the food that has all the coatings of poison. We don't know the point of origin. I am going to go get raw milk. Anybody almost anywhere in the United States within a 30, 45-minute drive can go get cow. You can see the cow before you buy the meat, right? We can see the vegetables. We have the option. A lot of people just don't even realize where the meat came from, right? They don't realize there is another way. And it just takes me telling one person and that person telling another person, and it's exponential. Nicole and I do Self-Reliance Festival. We have 700 to 1,000 people that show up from around the world to come here to the compound. And that's what we want you to walk away with. And we never know what it is when the light bulb comes on, but you see the light bulb come on. People always say, how do I get my wife on board? Well, you probably have the wrong wife to start with. You met the wrong person, right? If you want a chick that's going to mountain bike with you all the time, you should probably find her mountain biking. And that's the thing. I like to use California as an example. People come here from California, meet each other here in Tennessee, that literally live 10 minutes apart from each other for the last 30 years and only met because they came someplace where there was a common interest. And that can be food production. That can be living a different manner. That can be business development. It can be, I need to get out of the city. You just have to go where those common interests are, and it can evolve. Just as you know, with business, we can start on a business path that's at 12 o'clock, and then we can go 12 o'clock in 1 second. A couple miles down the road, it looks the same. 10 miles down the road, you don't even see each other, and it's just the slightest deviation.
So we get programmed by everything around us to take the path of least resistance, go along to get along, fit in, and we're herd animals. So that tunes into a natural instinct for a lot of people. Some people are just born different, and they will decide and make their own path no matter what. But there are a lot of people in sort of this squishy middle ground that once they wake up can start taking steps. And I think that you don't become free, you choose to be free wherever you are. Even if you're in a 6 foot by 6 foot by 6 foot box, you can do something mentally in your head that nobody can control. And once you realize that, that is a huge power from which you can take strength to make the decision next. And when we expose people to being a little bit uncomfortable, or we push back on them, because it's not the norm in our society anymore to just push back on something that seems like, well, let's evaluate your assumptions there with what you said, man. Like, what if there was another option? I was talking to somebody this weekend who wants to get out on a rural property, and they make a great income and they have a digital job. So like, this is awesome for that. And they were talking about like the financing structure of doing that, which is one way to do it. You can totally leverage your credit score to do that. But I was like, but what's your cash position? Like, can you just buy the property and live simply for about a year and pay cash for the house you want? And then you avoid paying for that house 3 times, which then puts you ahead and it opens up cash flow. And, people will argue with me about this and they'll say borrowed money is better, but sometimes it isn't better. Like, I'm in a $75,000 home on 3 acres that is probably worth $250 now based on our local market. But I have paid more than $250 for this because I mortgaged it. And I look back on that and I just think, what could I have done to just come up with the 75 grand, 15 years ago when I first got this place? Like, how much could I have done with that other capital to move us forward here and in other ways in our lives? So it's something that's constantly undermined by exposing yourself to the wrong things. And then when you find yourself going, I do this, when I find myself going along to get along, I ask myself, wait, what are the other options? But that takes discipline and that takes putting yourself in uncomfortable positions. I think almost everybody, John, that we've seen the light come on for, they've either heard somebody's story and it hit them emotionally. Like, you'll see it hits them emotionally and they're like, oh my gosh, that's me. And now in this other person, I see that I am my own worst enemy. I'm my own barrier. Or you've yelled at them.
I've yelled at him.
Yeah, you've yelled at him. He's been like, you're not going to do that. And then they're like, I'll show him. I'm going to go do it. And then you're like that guy from Self-Reliance Festival in October who has worked out every single day since you told him to start moving. And he has put it on TikTok. Like, I go over there and I just like his TikToks because I'm like, yeah, you're doing it, man. You don't have to wait to buy weights. You can do push-ups with your own weight. And that's, if you do something, then that moves you further along.
Absolutely. And those are exponentially, those are proof of concept, right? People see that person do it and they're like, well, I can do that too.
Yeah. Be the light, be the one that, and John, you do a great job of that. And Nicole, sorry, I haven't been following as much what you're up to. I'm sure you're the same, but yeah, John. And I think that the thing that I've heard you reiterate too, John, and I think this is super important. And it for whatever reason, we have us common or present day mammals for some reason have this resistant point of making this excuse that whatever you're doing, I can't do, or that like you were bestowed with some magical power, or your granddaddy gave you a bank account or something. There's something that you've got, some little edge that you have that, I don't have that thing. He's got X, Y, and Z. Even if it's grit, people will like use that as an excuse, like, oh, I can never do that. Yeah, well, you're right. If you believe you're 100% right.
Yep. If you think you can't, you are correct.
I think learning not to care when you fail, other than to learn from it. Like, I do care when I fail, and it hurts for a minute, but I don't not start something because it might not work out. But there was a time in my life where I was so afraid of what other people would think when they saw me fail.
Other people who we don't even know.
Yeah, right. Or even ones we do. Like, I don't like failing, but if I don't start and fail and learn, then I don't succeed later at that thing. Like, I cure meat. I have molded more pieces of meat on accident and just wasted it all to get there than, well, I mean, now I'm really good at it, but I had to learn, like, oh, don't store it in that way, or keep up on the schedule, because if you don't, it molds. Like, stupid things that you should already know. But I don't know. It's just we teach in our government schools and in society in general, we teach a great fear of failure. And what I find when I have somebody who's very programmed and young that I'm working with is they want me to tell them how to do it all the time. And I'm a Gen X. Like, we just plugged things in till they worked. And we figured that out, right? They are afraid they're going to make something explode. And I'm like, what's the worst thing? I mean, like, my first job, I was cleaning out a freezer and I stabbed it with the ice pick and I killed the freezer. And at that time, like, the $150 to replace this thing was a big deal to me. And they never, like, the company didn't charge it for me. The president was laughing her ass off when she saw me do it. And I think for 3 weeks, I felt terrible about this. But that was a failure. And have I ever stabbed a freezer since? Absolutely not. Like, I went and learned how all that works, so I would never do that again.
We used to buy chemistry kits and you would make explosives. That literally was part of the chemistry kit that we would buy in the 80s. And the kits you would buy from Radio Shack and stuff, you would make things that could physically hurt you. And the whole school system has removed that, right? If the school system lets you and tells you there's another way, you should start a business, be an entrepreneur. I mean, it's the same reason we don't teach kids to balance checkbooks and do amortization, because they would figure out that those college payments, they're going to work till you're 35 until you've even paid that. And a lot of jobs, you're not even going to start till you're 30. And the job field does not even exist in the manner of which it did when you started training for that. They don't want to have free people. They need you on that system. The school system was started in the manner that we teach from Prussia, and it was designed to get people to show up on time, follow a bell, have lunch on time, to create factory workers for, wars. And that's exactly it. It's look at how they're teaching math right now. If you and I can't understand the math that we're teaching, how do you continue to teach your children math? They're teaching them, and the answer is no longer the same. If I need you to cut a board that's 4 feet and you do some crazy shit and it doesn't come up with 4 feet, how are we going to have this door fit in this entryway here? It's always about following the steps. If the outcome is the same, the outcome is the same. And it's about keeping that system going. Whereas what they say, 8 million children didn't show up to the public school system this last year after all of that. How come I can take my dog and drop it off at doggy daycare and physically 24 hours a day watch my dog, but you can't do that with your kid at public school? Those are problems. We send our kids to be raised. I mean, if you think about it, school has your child more than you have your child out of the waking day. And then we send our kids to be raised by people who don't like our way of life. And then we wonder why our kids deviate and do things that we don't believe in. It all starts with that family. Get a piece of property. We've been convinced that you have to have a 2,500 square foot home with 4 bedrooms and 2.5 baths, and it all has to be under one roof, when you could buy a piece of property and put in several structures and stop putting your elderly into warehouses, right? Keep your parents on property, keep your grandparents on property. You are going to be that person in 50 years. So set the precedence for that. Bury your elderly on the property where your children can go and see where they were. History is his story. No tell your story unless you tell your story and it is passed on. So have those kids there to learn that story. And while we can go work, our parents can help raise those kids and that next generation and set the precedence for that. Imagine if you had a community with 100 families in it that did exactly that, how powerful that community would be. We always complain in the small towns that these people are moving in from California to New York. Well, then why aren't we moving people in as the properties come available that have our like-mindedness in mind, right? And that's the only way you're going to change that. That's the only way you're going to redirect the future.
Yeah, that's something I think something that I think about a lot is that there's this. I read this article one time. It's actually a really good article. You can look it up sometime. It changed my entire perspective on the issue. And this was written many years ago. It was like, it was written by a guy for a leftist magazine. It was kind of like medium.com or something. I think the article's name was How Did Half America Lose Their Effing Mind? And it was something like in vote for Trump or something. But this was a guy who came from a small town and then went to the big city. And he was like, hey, look, there's this weird thing going on where I came from the small town and I went to the big city. I know what both sides look like, but my big city friends have no idea what the small town rural life looks like. It doesn't go, it only goes one way. It doesn't go the other way. So whatever benefits or non-benefits that come with either one of those lifestyles, only one side of the group can get both perspectives. You never have somebody from Chicago move to a small rural town in Tennessee. It almost like never happens. It's like, oh, okay, I can see the pros and cons now. It's always, but you do that. Everyone does the other way around. You're from a small town in Tennessee and you go do a field trip as a kid to the big cities. And then you know what both lives are like. But there's a half the population, if not more now in the United States, the coastal blue cities, the congregated urban places, the ones where they literally don't even see the stars at night. You know, can you imagine that? There's people now that are like 50, 60 years old who have never seen the stars. And not only haven't they seen stars, they've not even seen the other side of the whole entire United States. They don't know what it's like to know your neighbor. They don't know what it's like to like, uh-oh, I have a problem. I need to call my neighbor and or my pipe's busted. Oh, Jim will go turn them off for me. And that's like, not, imagine there's people in New York City they might live in an apartment complex and they have never, ever actually learned the first name of either one of their little apartment neighbors side by side. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. So when I lived in an urban lifestyle, I knew all my neighbors and I organized them, but I lived in a not so nice neighborhood and you had to, you needed to know your neighbors. And then I lived in Nashville and we waved, but we didn't know each other. And when I moved here, which I'm in a very rural setting, I thought I wouldn't see another soul for the rest of my life. And the very first day, my next door neighbor drives up the driveway, introduces himself, ends up being a really good friend. And I realized how different, the culture here is like the culture where I grew up in Oregon, which was also a rural setting where we all knew each other. You could trust your kids at your neighbor's house if you had a medical emergency or a family emergency and needed to put your kids somewhere. And it was a community effort to help each other out rather than I go to my job. I'm tired. I'm going to come home and watch TV or play video games and drink myself to sleep at night, which is not a terribly healthy lifestyle. But that doesn't mean that everybody in the city is not doing it right. I have a friend who lives in Manhattan she's actually a very prepared Manhattanite in a very small space. And she's like, I like to go to art galleries and I like to go out to eat and I make lots of money. So I'm going to live here and this is the way it's going to be. And that's fine too. She's made the choice though. And a lot of people just don't, they end up where they are out of habit. And it's just a totally different thing when you're like, you know what? These are the characteristics I'm looking for. I'm going to travel around and find it. You've done it. You've ended up in Colorado, even though we want you in Camden. But you end up in a place and you think if you would have asked me when I was 12 years old in Oregon, that I was going to live in Tennessee, I would have thought you were crazy because the stereotype of the rural Southern people is that they're stupid, they're bigoted, they're violent, and all of these things. And when I came down here, the reality was different. It's completely different than what has been spun for rural America. And that's part of what I think what keeps the urban folks from coming out.
Oh yeah, they're looking at a lot of people in big cities, they look down their nose at people in rural, and they'll tell you what it's like to live in rural environments, even though they never have. And what's funny about rural environments is that you're living in close quarters. You do need your neighbors and they need you sometimes. And your reputation matters. It stays with you. You can't just burn somebody. You can't be making a deal with your bud and say you're going to buy his cow and then not buy his cow or do something, because that'll stick with you. So your reputation matters. Being in an environment where you know your neighbors, it matters. And especially if they're different from you, okay, it's the most libertarian mindset. When people want to point to the South or rural areas as being racist, it's like, you've never been there, because the first thing you realize is that I don't care what that dude's race is. It doesn't matter if their race. That's my neighbor, and we need to help each other. It doesn't matter what. It doesn't really even matter. I might go to church, and we might think that homosexuality is wrong, but I don't care if Bill's gay with Phil. That doesn't really matter if I want to sell him a cow. It doesn't hold any water for that kind of situation. The rural people live together in conjunction way better than somebody in an urban environment, where, especially if you go to some of these neighborhoods, there's so much more compartmentalized. Go in New York, go in Chicago, go in one of these big cities, and what you realize is there's little like neighborhoods of usually homogenous individuals, right? They're the ones who are kind of secluding themselves off via race or culture or something. A small town, it's a mixing pot.
Yeah, you don't care what color the guy is that shows up to pull your car out of the ditch in the middle of the night. You just don't. And we have less standing deadwood, right? Everybody knows everybody. You tend to know people. Like when I lived in San Diego, I didn't know any of my neighbors. I lived multiple different places. I didn't know any of those people. I would leave my place to go hang out with people that I worked with or that were friends or whatever event we were doing. I didn't know my neighbors. I was never home, ever. If I was home, like even here, we had a giant house. I was never in it 24 hours a day. I didn't know any of my neighbors. I would drive home to sleep. It was a super expensive motel room. That's all it was. And when you get out here, you just know everybody. Especially, I saw somebody in here said something about business owners. Man, if you want to change Democrats to Republicans or whatever you consider yourself to be, just start a business. As soon as you start realizing how much money is stolen, as soon as you start paying payroll taxes, that all goes out the window. Just teach kids when you have children, pay them for the skills and the tasks that they do, and make them spend their money to do things. Let them learn from a young age, and then tax them. Like teach them taxes.
Take 40% out of their pockets.
Yeah, take 10% out of their pockets. They'll understand it.
Yeah, I remember the first paycheck I got with the taxes withheld didn't bother me too much, but the union fee for a union I was not part of, I argued about that for like 3 weeks at that place. I'm like, you're not negotiating my wage. Why am I paying you, $2 a pay cycle? It wasn't very much at the time, but they were like, because you are getting paid what you get paid because blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I did not like unions from the first moment I came across my first one for that reason. I'm like, I'm not getting what I pay for.
Yeah, it's a mob at that point. Yeah, you need our protection. You need our protection. It's like, yeah. So, yeah, Nicole, you were saying earlier, I think about, what was it you were saying? I can't remember, but just about thinking differently. We just need sometimes we just need to see that there's another way. And it's so crazy how we accept things the way they are. Income tax is so bizarre. As an employer, I am legally obliged to take, when an employee earns $100, I take the money for the government before I pay the employee. Isn't that crazy that you pay the government before you pay yourself? That you're 2 to 3 months out of the year, you're working for the government. Do we feel like you're getting your money's worth? You feel like that road is that nice? The road, that's where the money's going towards, is the road. Got to have those roads.
Yeah, that's theft. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the government we're forced to pay. That's so crazy that even before we take it out of our own, even before it goes in our pocket, it goes to somebody else. They know what to do better with it than I do. That 15, 20, 30%, I'm sure that they're voting up on the Hill. I think they know what to do with that 30% better than I know how to do it. They should take it first. Yeah, you're right.
Yep.
Said nobody ever.
Yeah, and you're not allowed to drink this, and you're not allowed to eat that, and you're not allowed to do this. Yeah, man, it's insane. And people they participate with it. They've been programmed from day one that is what is expected.
Well, that's just the way it is, John. So every time I hear myself saying that is what it is, or that's just the way it is, that's like the first cue. I'm like, is that really the way it is? Like, can I get out of this at all? And taxes are a perfect example of that. One of the benefits of running your business is you can start moving some expenses that used to come after you paid taxes to before you pay taxes on the money. And
Even
that's like one of the great loopholes in air quotes that gets opened up when you go into business for yourself. So but it takes an awareness of seeing that that's going on. Porterhouse is in the room. Howdy, dude. Love
even
that soap.
they've even done a, even our side or whatever, right? My tax dollars are going to Ukraine. Your tax dollars aren't going to Ukraine. They are creating and inventing new money that's going to Ukraine. And then they are making you beholden to it so that you continue to believe that this system is real, so that you don't pull them from the castles. It keeps their system from collapsing. Why do they send all that money to Ukraine? Because they have to put all that US dollars out into other places so US dollars get spent, because our system doesn't really exist. It does not. It is not what you've been led to believe. Start yourself a business. Do as much barter as you can, retain as much money that nobody knows exists. And it's probably in some manner illegal for me to even say this. And if it's not, 5 years from now, somebody will knock on the door about something I said today, just like future crimes, right? So just remove yourself, grow some food. You will be amazed when you plant some seeds and something comes up, what else grows in your mind, what else that ignites, right? What else can I do? Harvest some rainwater, right? Purify the water, clean the water in some manner. And when you start doing those things, it just opens up other things. What am I capable of doing? Take something that you like to do and figure out how to sell that to somebody or trade that for something else that you want. And you will be surprised once you start doing those things, how many more of the systems or the claws or the chains that you're able to shut off when you just do the very first thing, as just as simple as growing some vegetables in a pot. It can be in trash. You can take something somebody's throwing away and get something to grow. You hear people that are like, I don't have the property you have. Man, I have a friend that literally her apartment looks at the state capitol building, and she produces more food on her patio, or at least uses more food on her patio than I produce here. And she does it just in these grow buckets. Everything's doable. You just have to do it.
The front of my house is 50 feet long, south facing. I grow 120 pounds of tomatoes, vining up that to keep the sun from hitting the south side of my house so that my AC isn't needed as much.
Oh.
And that's 120 pounds of tomatoes I don't have to buy at the store. And I spend maybe $25 to $30 on that at this point, with the power and some nutrient and just running the tomatoes up. I keep my seeds every year, and so that's not that much space, guys. You could grow 10 pounds of tomatoes in just one tomato pot if you want to do that. It's a choice. You have to decide to go for it. And sometimes you'll grow the tomatoes and they won't grow. That's okay.
Bob Lester says, how do you get your kids to listen to you and not blow you off as an asshole parent? Bob, it's like training your wife anything, right? She will not hear you, but another guy can say exactly what you say, and she will take those words in. You can't teach your wife to shoot, but TAC response can teach your wife to shoot. And I think a lot of that's the same with the kids. When I look back at my children, I think that I know I could have done a lot of things better, right? I actually feel like a failure with my kids, a lot of things, but my kids all are employed. They are all buying properties. They are all having families. So, I mean, what more can we really ask for at that point? Your children are harder and more responsible than most men. I gave your kid an $80,000 skid steer that literally could have destroyed my building, right? At how old is he? 13? Your son is carrying a firearm around at 13. We trust him with that, right? On certain properties. Your kids are head and heels over most men out in the world. And while, yes, we do want them to do things different, you also have your kids around other adults who are doing incredible things, and they're getting little bits of pieces. You are not the only one raising your child. There are a lot of other men raising your children, and women at the same time, right? Your kids, they're going to do incredible things. We already know that. They're already doing incredible things. But I mean, what do we want our kids to do? Take over our businesses, probably, right? Take things to another level. At the same time, we have to allow them to do that, you know? I don't know what the answer is, but I think your kids are doing pretty incredible things. Even your little kid. I mean, look at what he's doing. So I think you're on the right track, Bob.
Yeah, Bob's kids are going to do what they're going to do, as will any child. Your children will go build their life with or without you. That's a choice that ultimately they make, and I don't think you can make it. Like, there's nothing you can do to make them do what you think you want them to do. But Bob is a great example. He is taking responsibility for his community, for his health. He's working hard. He's a great businessman. He empowers people around him. And I think by doing that every day and showing up for your kids like I know you do, they may not be listening to you in the moment, but some of that is sinking in. And that is why his kids are of the caliber that they are.
Do difficult things together. Like Gary Smalley, 10 Keys to a Loving Relationship. He said the families that always stay together and the kids that the memories you have, what do you remember 20 years from now that you talk about? We went camping, the camper caught on fire, it got a flat tire, the tent blew away. It's those things. It's not all that we went to Disneyland and had a great time. It's all the stuff that you had to turmoil and go through strife together that builds those memories. You know, nobody wants to watch a superhero movie that starts out and the dude's the superhero and everything's great and he wins the day. He has to go through some terrible shit to become the superhero. You have to be pressure tested. And in society now, most people are not pressure tested. I was surprised when I moved out here to the middle of nowhere that when you don't pay your electricity bill, they turn your shit off like that day. Like they turn, because I didn't pay it. I had the money. I was just used to California where you just kind of paid it when you wanted to pay it. I was very surprised to come home and have no electricity and no water. At the same time, it was seamless. We just camped in the house that night and we went down and paid it. But they don't mess around out here. Whereas in the city, man, you don't pay your shit. You'll get a yellow tag. You'll get a pink tag. You'll get a bright white tag. Like they're never turning your shit off though. And that's the majority of society. I mean, people have no calluses. They do not know how to use a shovel. They have definitely never used a shovel to the point where you've broke the tip off of it and have to reshape the shovel. They've never put a handle on a shovel. Like it just doesn't exist in most people's worlds. Most people's strife and difficult is that the internet has turned off for a couple of hours. And we see young people that end their lives over that. That is the catalyst where they decide I can't live anymore because the power and the internet was off for just a few hours. And that's not, I mean, at least we hope that's not our families, you know, and we know that it's not because we've done difficult things together. Okay. Now for something completely different from the audience, Dustin, who did your website? It looks great.
We did. Yeah. And we continue to do it. We, that's something we've continued to reinvest in ourselves we got a couple of different buckets that are our business revenue streams as far as selling products and wholesale or Amazon. But e-commerce is a thing. That's where direct to consumer. We that's the way we communicate and sell our products. So we've continued to invest in that. We continue to always try to improve and be e-commerce experts. So that's us. What do you use for your website? Like what's it built on? Shopify. Same. Yeah, same. And about 25 apps. Yep, same. So many apps. Do you do paid marketing? Yeah. Well, where do you see the most come from? If I was asking you, hey, where should I do my ad spend? What would you recommend I do? Well, I love that. I love that question, and I'm going to go in a little bit different direction. Well, I'll the ad spend thing. I'll answer that succinctly, and then I'll kind of jump in like. Maybe somebody else out there will have that 4-minute mile aha moment of like, no, you can do it too if you only have like a little bit of money. Because we did. So my background is advertising. Go look it up. Go Google right now. Go look up top advertising schools in the world. And I went to University of Texas and I went to the creative program. It's one of the top advertising programs. For the first like 6 years at Wazoo, we never did advertising. We never, and now, and I'm so far removed now, that little fancy degree I got has no bearing. So I don't know. We have a team that does it. And our team these days usually does meta. And so we're constantly trying new creative, throwing new creative out there. Like I said earlier, fortunately some of this stuff has been taken off and it's like, why? Okay, whatever. Throw more money at it. Continue to expose more people. So that's working really well. It's a good team though. Really, that's what it is. We have an outside team. It took us years. We fired. Here's, I guess, one piece of advice with marketing. Yeah, especially if you get a business and you're publicly available, people can find you and they can start coming after you. You have to be very careful about marketers. Are they bullshitting you? Because they're really good marketers. They're probably good at marketing, but are they marketing to your customers and marketing to you? And that's the big problem you have to get over, is you got to figure out if they're bullshitting you, because they could be really good marketing, but they don't take it to that second level and marketing to your customers or marketing to you. So that's always been a challenge. We fired a lot of marketing agencies, a lot of advertising agencies. The second thing is also to be really tight with your numbers. Make sure that if it doesn't have a positive ROI, then why do it? If you can't, you could throw money into a lot of different things, and maybe some people are better than us of like going with their gut feeling of like, oh yeah, I think this is gonna, we can't really have any attribution of it, or we don't have a metric attached to it to know if it's been worthwhile. For us, it's been important. We're a small company. It's important to know if we're going to throw $1 somewhere, that dollar is going to turn into something else. So we have fancy spreadsheets, and we're constantly, if we're going to ever bring on a marketing agency or try something else in marketing, our first thing, pretty much, this is like my rule of thumb, is like, you got to guarantee. I mean, my customers, if there's a customer who buys something, no questions asked, and they're like, hey, we got this cash cap from you, but I just don't like it. Cool, full refund. If you don't like it, we're not trying to fool anybody. This is not a bait and switch. If you don't like our product, fine. Like, let's just go different directions. Let me have the product back. I'll give you your money all back. So what we do with our customers, I expect, if I'm a customer too, if there's a market agency say, we can get X, Y, and Z and Q and W, awesome, dude, all day. I'll take out $1 million loan and give it to you tomorrow. If you can take $1 million and turn it into $2 million. But here's the caveat. If you can't do that, I get my money back, right? Okay, cool. Thank you. But starting out, we didn't do advertising. We didn't do a lot of paid ads, paid marketing. What we did is a lot of PR, basically just making a lot of friends. And still to this day, back in the day, it wasn't as much influencer marketing, creative content creation, but that's where I'd invest my money. If you're a new company starting out right now, it would just be getting your product out, send out free product to all the guys with no expectations, with nothing. You just say, hey, Bob, you're really into hunting. I got this new hunting camouflage shirt we're making, and I just want you to try it out. I know you're big into hunting. You got 20,000 followers. If you don't I'm going to send you this shirt. If you try it out, and you do whatever you want with it. If I never hear back from you again, that's okay. No strings attached. And I would just do that. I would just be giving people out product to try out, folks who can give you back feedback. And that will come back to you. It'll come back to you in media. I mean, this is, I went to the store this week. We're in 3 different magazines. We have like full page spreads on 3 different magazines that are in the stores right now. And multiple times we're in the magazines. And we didn't pay 1 penny for it. And they're all good friends. All these editors and everything, they're all good friends. And they always hook us up. And I'll do anything if they ever ask for anything, I'll be happy to do it. But that would be, you can be savvy, you can be cheap, but you got to be really careful with marketing, because there will be a lot of people who will try to take $1 out of your pocket, and they'll make big claims. And if they don't back it up, where was the risk on that one? Was the risk on them, or was the risk on you? The risk is on you. You've got the most liquidable asset. They want your dollar. They've got to prove that they have some kind of value they're bringing to the table. So I would be very skeptical with paying anybody without kind of a guarantee, or with not investing something that you can't track really closely and guarantee that you're actually coming on top. And pay attention to your numbers. It's not just if you're putting $1 towards advertising and you see a 2 ROAS, or return on your ad spend, that might not be profitable for your company. If you don't have the margins and you haven't looked deep into your company and know what your profit and loss looks like on a micro and macro level, then you might be losing money on that. You might think that I put $1 and I got $2 out. Yeah, but like, how much does the product cost? How much is your overhead cost? All those other things cost. And luckily, the engineer Nick, the other business partner, he's just he's a numbers Nick. He's great at crunching the numbers. So those are my little marketing pieces of advice: is you don't have to go out and spend a bunch of money for marketing. It's 2024. The internet gives you accessibility to 8 billion people tomorrow. You can do it cheap, and you can do it efficiently.
24 hours a day, and there's no gatekeepers. For people that don't know, Meta is what controls Facebook and Instagram, and you're going to do everything through the back end. And if you're starting a business, I had a conversation today with a young man, and I said, look, you need your social media footprint. What's your last name? All right, we're going to take your last name. That's going to be Enterprises. You're going to lock this on. I want you to get Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok, and I want you to do that tonight. That's free, and I want you to spend $17 and buy the URL. When you come back tomorrow and tell me you've done those, you should be able to do all of those in 90 minutes tonight. When you tell me you've done those, I will tell you what the next thing we're going to do is with that, and we can change that. But I tell guys all the time, and they start this thing, and I go, what's your social media? Oh, I don't have it. Well, then how am I going to tell anybody about it? How am I going to talk to you? How am I going to expose 3 million people today to you if you don't have social media? Well, I don't really, then I can't do business with you. That's really where we are at in today's market. And you might find, like we do 2 podcasts every week. We're doing more social media and media development than we actually are in the other company. You will quickly get to a point where you start this journey. We say you buy an acre of property and just start showing your homesteading journey. Within a year or 2 years, you might just be a whole media development company where you're not even doing the homesteading thing. All of a sudden you've got 100-acre property that you're doing, and you've got a team of people, and you've got cameras. I mean, that's what I'm sitting in a tiny house right now, but this is our podcast studio right here. And there's cameras and all kinds of gear in here. I mean, that's really what we do. If you push me and you say, what do you really do all day long? Social media is what I really do. What would you tell guys starting out who have a company, they're, making, 10, 15 or 100 grand a year, and they want to start doing Facebook and Instagram? Would you have a course that you'd recommend, or an online training thing, or would you tell them just go YouTube it? What would you recommend they do to kind of learn that and start dabbling in that?
I do think you need to learn it probably. We don't, I basically, I'm now, I'm a Mr. Manager of this whole thing. I don't go on the back end, and I'm not messing with any dials. We have a marketing team, and they're giving me weekly videos of, hey, let me show you how we're doing. This is good. And so just kind of decision maker, just kind of managing it. However, my piece of advice would be for this kind of thing, as well as lots of other aspects of business. And I don't know exactly where the tipping point is, but I think you need to know enough about a certain topic to be able to know if someone's bullshitting you and to know the lingo. So you do need to go learn the advertising, because you'll never know if you're winning or losing if they're like throwing these words at you, and you need to know the basics. And that's across the board. If it's production, every time and I do this every time when I'm like going into a new industry with production, is I'll sit down with the manufacturer, or I'll deep dive into that industry, and I'll learn, as much as I possibly can. It might be YouTube videos or read a book or whatever. I want to know the lingo they use. I want to know what their stress points are. I want to know how they work, because I want to be a good partner too. And I've so many times we're having this, like, it's just, we're not connecting. And I'm like, I'll come back to the table with the manufacturer. I'm like, hey, tell me what's the problem going on there? Like, explain to me what y'all's issues are. Cause from over here, I see this, but show me your perspective. And sometimes it'll be either way. Like, their excuses are, I'm like, oh, well, have you tried this? And like, oh, that's a really good idea. Or it'll be like, oh, it'll be on me. And I never realized that those were even problems that they're discussing, and that I don't know that their perspective. And so I'm like, oh, well, what if we work with you in a different way and like do this deal a bit differently so that we can work together? Because I hear you, this is your issue. You can't get good employees or whatever. So, okay, what if we do this? What if we fund you? What if we buy the machine for you? Or just figure out creative ways. It's all about understanding the industry to some extent. So I think taking that Jocko extreme ownership position of like, how can I be a better partner? How can I understand the any kind of industry or community that I'm getting in? You don't have to be an expert on it, but you do need to be able to speak. You need to be able to understand the totality of it on a macro scale. How does all the cogs work in this system? Meta, who the hell is Meta? Oh, okay, Meta owns Facebook and Instagram. Okay, cool. And then the way that they advertise, they use this, and then there's a thing called creative. You take this creative and you put ad spin behind the creative. And then you can ask them point blank, put your ego to the side. I do this all the time. I know advertising, but they'll throw out a new word. I'm like, hey, wait. Can we pause for a second? What was that thing you just said? Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. Never heard that before. Yeah. So that would be my advice, is to when you jump in, learn as much as you feel comfortable. You're able to now talk to them and be able to ask more questions about their work, how thing works.
So you mentioned Jocko. I've got two friends. We built kit for two guys that work for Echelon Front right now. I'm sure you saw Jocko's gym burnt down. The big gym burnt down last weekend. What did he say? Good. We'll rebuild. Like that's like super, like gives you chills when you saw that. Like when I'm watching it, I didn't even realize it was Jocko's gym when I started watching that. Pretty insane. What were you going to say, Nicole?
Well, I was just going to follow up on Dustin's comments just on advertising and meta and some of those things, because I've been on both sides of this equation where I used to be the marketing firm trying to like guide the customer through how can we actually track results? Because one of the most frustrating things about advertising and marketing is, can I connect this magazine ad buy to an increase in revenue legitimately? Like, and finding out. So from the managing that standpoint on the customer or on the business owner side, having a good understanding of what you can and cannot track is super important. And then how that relates to your revenue is very important, and what the purpose of whatever ad or PR or marketing effort you're going to do is. Is it an awareness thing? Is it conversion to sales? Is it for a specific event like SRF, right? Like, what are the things you're tracking? And then back up, how can I actually track that with the tools that exist in a way that's as automated as possible, even if it costs a little bit of money to automate it, so that I don't have a guy running around after details full time, because that's a huge investment too. When you learn those things, you get along better with the people that you're working with. And if you tracking scares a marketing or advertising person away, you didn't want to be with them to begin with. We get
emails. I get emails every day. Hey, I can take your podcast and cut it in, or I can do this for you. If you're hitting me up as a marketer, you better have some footprint. Like I work with several companies that are similar to yours. Oh yeah, which ones are those? Oh, cool. Let me carbon copy you with the CEO who I talked to yesterday, and let's see. And they just ghost, right? Most of it, 90% of it, is kids looking to get their foot in the door and actually do something they haven't done. And maybe the work the guy's doing that you're not doing is better than the work you're not doing, but a lot of it is not real. As you get that footprint. And then like you showed Off-Grid Survival, that was Recoil, owned them for a long time. We were in Recoil every month for years and years and years until we finally bought full page ads in Recoil. But because we didn't run a discount code or anything, we never tracked any orders. I never had an order come in where in the notes it said, hey, I found out about you guys from Recoil. We had been around much longer than Recoil. I got great for Glenn, who works for Recoil, and those guys, we're great friends with all them dudes. But print magazine is just not there. And they got such a start so late on social media that we had dudes, if we had ran codes, we would definitely get guys using our discount code to get the discount. But if we correlated it and really looked at it, they were already existing customers. So few dudes were actual new, allocation of just new guys. Whereas when you go out to shows and stuff, those are real customers. Like I am talking to you right now because you were out there and you guys did that deal on the comms and you guys did that deal on the radios. And I stood there in the tent when you guys gave that whole presentation on your products. I don't know what you paid to be there. I don't remember what we paid to be there, but we got real customers and friends to this day because we were there in North Carolina in the mud.
Literally speaking.
Yeah.
Hey Nicole, I got a funny quip for you. This comes from my advertising degree. Probably the only cute thing I got that came out of that is it was a quote by some advertising, some famous advertising guy. He said, "Well, we know for a fact that 50% of all the advertising we do works. Problem is we don't know what 50%."
I kind of feel that on a visceral level right now for my own company, but yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine who runs some agencies, and she did a webinar for me just on developing your brand, which is great for people beginning with their new business. some things to think about as you choose your logo and colors and how they'll interplay
Cool.
on all the platforms. And she dropped this and didn't come back to it in like 2 seconds. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm going to play with that. And she's like, what you need to do is do a low, slow spend on Facebook, on Meta, on your existing customer, on your existing followers, because they'll engage with your posts and things. And that is then viewed by Meta as a high quality interaction.
Yeah.
And then you'll be more likely to be served up to people who are similar in sort of that organic reach.
Yeah.
And then, yes, if you're doing an acquisition campaign, that's a different thing. And I was like, man, I have spent over the course of my podcast that's been around for 7 years, exactly $0 on that. $0. And I'm like, I'm going to go play with that and see what that looks like and see what does my engagement go up? Like the goal of that is not conversions to money, that the goal of that is comments and interactions and shares. And does that work? And then what does that mean for downloads, 6 months from now?
Yeah. If I could give one anecdote, because I preach about stuff and then I don't do it for our own Wazoo company. I'm like, well, Mr. Manager now. I'm like doing HR and payroll all the time and all the other kind of like boring stuff. I'm not even doing any of the fun stuff anymore for the business. And for social media, I have all the answers, but like if you don't copy what Wazoo does, because I definitely, because we don't necessarily need it. We got enough traction and organic and at the very beginning that it's worked enough for us to not continue to do the right thing. What if I was to step back and I could tell you all the wrong things that Wazoo does in social media and stuff, but I'm so preachy to all my friends. And then we did something today, me and my best bud the other day, we did the proof of concept. And I'm so happy that I was able to do that because now I can point to him like, you can't, because it's the you can to 4 minute mile. Last year, me and my best bud, there's a little small town barbecue joint called Larry's Country Style Barbecue in my hometown of Madisonville, Texas. Larry, in a little a tornado took down his building, so he's in a trailer. He has no idea don't even try to explain to him what Facebook or Instagram is. He has no idea. Just an old cook, barbecue. But he makes delicious barbecue, and he's always been like my second dad. He's taught me barbecue and everything. So we were like, became a mission last year. It was like, hey. Actually, the mission was to try and get a magazine to cover him. There's a magazine called Texas Monthly, which is a magazine that covers barbecue. And it's a game changer for a lot of businesses, especially in Texas barbecue businesses. So we're like, our mission, here's our one little mission. We're going to get Larry's in Texas Monthly. So how are we going to do that? We're going to blow him up with social media. Within 2 months, we took Larry's, which didn't have any social media whatsoever. And you can see, go look it up yourself. He's now at 324K. And that was within like 1 to 2 months, just from a couple viral videos, because it just resonated really well with people. And I don't think we haven't touched the social media in a couple months because they ended up, we blew up so big that the editor of the magazine ended up driving down and doing a collaborative post. We ended up getting contacted by Traeger Grills wanting to do collaborative stuff with us. And so, yeah, it was all just because we were able to tell a story on the platform. We just try to get a couple different things, do a couple of things against the wall, but it wasn't like we were working too hard. It was just a little bit of an A+B formula. You got a good story, put it on the platform, a couple different ways, boom, and it blew up. And so you can too, and you can do it. And that I've never spent a penny. That was never we haven't put one penny in blowing Larry's up. And now his like entire life has changed. Like the little Larry's Country Style Barbecue completely changed. We did a pop-up in Austin. We even like drove him to Austin and did a pop-up. He's a celebrity. People are coming from all over, and there's a big long line and stuff. And so you can do that too. You don't have to be an expert. You just kind of have to have your ear to the ground and play the game a little bit, and you can do it with no money. So I guess I bring that up because I know there's restriction points. And we always want to throw money at the problem. I have a lot of friends that they want to get into business. They have a little product or something, and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to hire a website designer. And I'm like, no, you do not. You do not want to pay $3,000 to $5,000 to have someone do a custom built website. And then as soon as it breaks and you can't get a hold of him, you can't fix it. Or, do it as cheap as possible. The Power of Broke, I think, is a Damian Johns book. It's pretty dang good. I mean, but just the title just says it all. And we try to do that to this day. That's an old like Amazon. Who's Jeff Bezos for like many years into Amazon kept a door as his desk because that was just an illustration, demonstration of keeping the poor mentality, making sure you're always just being a cheap little penny pincher. And we're still to this day, we're so cheap. But that teaches you to be resourceful. And I think that's the thing that I would love for people to know is like, you don't have to have money or you don't have to have a special knowledge. Just be resourceful and look around, just like in a survival scenario, look around. What are my resources? No. Cool. Let's do it. And have the confidence and identity to follow through.
Yeah, and you could,
two of us banned a guy in your comments at the same time, John.
Yeah, it wasn't me. Hey, Kiri, what's up? Yeah, and I mean, we can make these guys go viral, but if they can't fulfill the orders, that's the fastest thing you can get really popular. And then if you can't feed the client, you're out of business from that a lot of times also. So it's at the same time. Oh, yeah. And you use Shopify as we use Shopify. If you're a new business owner and you're talking about a website, if you can do Facebook, you can do Shopify. And you can plug in these apps, for instance, like abandoned cart checkout. Hey, we'll give you 5% or 10% if you check out right now. Or if you refer a customer, there was an app we used for a long time that you would agree when you would place an order and refer a customer that it would also show your order on your social media. So people saw, hey, we ordered. Like we had huge growth from those things. We eventually shut them off because we were getting more repeat customers who already know about us. And then they would just use that every time to get that discount. But for growing your business, there's a ton of stuff and it's very inexpensive. And when you start using Shopify, like we get hit up from Shopify all the time. Hey, we want to interview you. You're in our top 10% of customers using Shopify. We get that all the time, constantly. So it's very beneficial. There's other stuff. You don't have to use Shopify. That's just the one I know. We had the company that did North Face's website build our website. We couldn't add anything to it ever. Like it was awesome for about 6 months, and then we couldn't do shit with it.
That's not good.
When we went to Shopify is super usable. It is just very user friendly. Everything's plug and play, and you drag your photos and such into there. When you grew his barbecue channel, did you find yourself using Instagram more or Facebook? Always?
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook blew up a little bit too, but not as much. Instagram was a lot easier. The Reels is where it was at right there. And probably we could have blown up. I think it would have blown up on TikTok too. I just didn't want to play that game. I literally don't even put TikTok on my phone. We have a TikTok guy and representative, and they do TikTok for us. I just didn't want to. It's just too much for me. But I think it would have translated to TikTok as well, virality of it. But Instagram, the Reels was just like where it just blew up.
We find a lot of TikTok is not on our other social media. So it's separate customers a lot of times. And our growth rate is much higher on TikTok. I always question whether that's real. Like, are they giving you 2 for 1 or something? But it is like we have a channel that's not even 6 months old for one of our podcasts, and we're over 100 times there already. Whereas on Instagram, the growth rate's not that large compared to TikTok. Now you said is your team in-house, your social media team? Are they in-house?
No, it's just it's a marketing firm that and we've hired, they have multiple different teams that we've kind of hired. So, we have like an ad team, and we have a CRO team and a content creation team. So,
are you still kind of the lead singer of the band? Are you the guy out there talking about the product and such?
You talking about like on social media? No, not so much anymore. One day I might get back to that a little bit. But it's just, 8, 10, 12 hours a day. I'm doing the business thing a lot of time. I'm doing the administrative side of the business. And that's fun. It's a different than I anticipated it to be in. We're running teams and managing people and having strategies. Being bigger picture has really, I think, enabled us to get out of looking too tight and getting too into the business and working on the business. And so I think once some of the processes start falling into place a little bit even cleaner, where I can even take my hands off that, and there's people who are managing those processes even closer, and I'm just getting like little reports here and there, then maybe I'll jump back in and kind of being more of the face or whatever. personality and kind of being more in front of the camera. But really, truly, I just put on my whiteboard yesterday. It's like, I'd love to just continue hiring more of my friends. It's kind of one of my goals too, is like, I have a lot of friends that I love to incorporate into our business in different ways. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I want to kind of keep growing it to a point like, oh, she's really good at videography and editing. She's so good. I want to bring her on. I need to eke out, X amount of cash per year so I can get her on board too. And this guy over here, oh man, wouldn't it be so cool if he could quit his job and work for us? Let's get him on board.
That's cool. When you started designing products, was it easy for you to find manufacturers, or did you go through a lot of different, like, what kind of issues did you have with that?
He's having internet issues. So you need to ask the question again, John.
Yeah, please.
So when you started designing products and bringing new products to market, you don't manufacture most of them in-house. How did you find those manufacturers? And then how do you get that manufacturer to scale if they're not capable of it? Or do you source a new like your hats, for instance? You guys aren't sewing your hats, right?
No, the hats we don't. I think every single new industry, we've done a lot of weird stuff, like from cut and sew, like you just mentioned, to rubber extrusion, plastic mold injection, to all the different assemblies. And like most textiles and materials we've kind of worked with, except for maybe computers. I've never done any like technologies and stuff, but I've kind of dabbled in all that. And the thing that I've learned is kind of what I mentioned before earlier, is every new industry has their ways of doing things. They have different ways. I get a good grasp of what the industry looks like. What is there? Lots of multiple manufacturers? Is there multiple? Is it vertically integrated? Is there a lot of steps? Are they located? Is there domestic versions? Are they all international versions? What are they known for? And really understand the industry, and then diving in deeper. Then I want to get to know, like, okay, we're going to get this manufacturer. We're going to work with them, sitting down with them and really building a relationship with them and trying to understand them, like earnestly asking questions like, okay, so what if we do this? And this is where we're at, and this is where you're at. And I think it's all about trying to have an honest, earnest conversation with them, because everyone's been different. And a lot of them we sometimes have to jump ship. It just wasn't working out. They're not keeping up with production. And it's one of those things like, hey, we're out scaling you. I would love to work with you. Maybe if you guys get your stuff together, we can come back. Or quality's not there. Hey, and it comes back on. I'm always asking myself, how can we do better? Okay, look, you guys turned in this thing, and this is where it needs to be. Can you see the difference between these two things? No, they look the same. Okay, well, that's cool. Like I'm playing the game of which one of these don't look alike, and it's not the same for you. Like, you don't see what I see, so that's probably not going to work out. Like, step one is we have a quality, and you don't see the same thing. So, you can walk away from a lot of those relationships and kind of like just not aligned, and that's kind of where I come from. At least, is just trying to make sure that there's an alignment on all those little facets of a partnership, on cost, efficiency, scale, quality, all those things. And it's hard to find somebody who does it all, right? Who's able to scale, who will pick you up when you're doing small quantities, who will maintain the quality. Because it's just like a lot of businesses, you can be fast, or you can be cheap, or you can be convenient, but you can't be all three. Like,
yeah, pick two. Yeah.
Okay, I got a question in from the audience here. Would you guys share your lessons after action report of building intentional community? How did social media help or hurt that process? Is this in your wheelhouse, Dustin?
Yeah, I think we're always, as far as what I understand the question to be, like intentional community. That's one of the big parts. In the last couple of years, I started asking, I think it's like 4 or 5 years ago, I kind of like woke up and I was like, how the hell did we do this? How are we still around? Like, we don't have a secret sauce. We don't have enemies. Like, we don't really have any enemies. We didn't have, and I was like, we've been doing this for several years. No one hates us. Like, am I doing something wrong? Aren't I supposed to be pissing people off? Aren't I supposed to be? And I started asking like friends and I, hey, can you give me honest, why do people like us? Like, what are we doing right? Because I'm always constantly asking what we're doing wrong and trying to fix that. But I was thinking, I want to double down on what we're doing right, because we're still around. Somehow we haven't killed ourselves. So I kept on asking them what we're doing right. They would say things like, "Oh, you guys test your products. Like we've seen you doing going out and doing these survival trips, and you're actually doing it. Or we know the quality you stick by, and you're doing." So I started kind of gaining like a little bit of the pulse of what was working, and a lot of it was just being integrated with our communities, like going out and testing our products, going out and going to events, meeting John, and just being more integrated with folks. And so I was like, okay, well, we need to double down on that. So I've done that now. I've been more intentional about it the last couple of years when I realized that the reason we're around is because we have, me and my business partner Nick both come from small town. Always have a culture of this kind of small town feeling of like, if you go into the local little store, they know you by your first name, they know what you order, kind of thing. And we always wanted to maintain that real small town feel. And to this day, we try to kind of maintain that, and we want to do best by people. And so we've kind of gained a little bit of kind of rules to live by. We have problems. Don't think for a second we haven't had legal issues and had to solve them with lawyers and spend a lot of money doing it, but you never hear about it. You don't see me going on social media and blasting people. You don't see, and then we try to work it out first. If we have a problem with somebody, we go talk to them like, hey, you did the thing. That's inappropriate. You burned us here. You did this thing. And we try real hard on the back end. Please don't make us do this, please. And then if they make us do it, then we have to do the thing. But I think that's all. We've always chose to do the high road, even if it means it's going to cost us, my bank account isn't just rolling over in dough, but in business, if it costs a couple $1,000s or something just to kind of be done with a problem, okay, fine, whatever. Or, let's just move on. I want to be somebody who's building something. I think the word you're using there is building. I want to be too busy building stuff than like trying to destroy things. I'm constantly trying to like, okay, cool. Like this person's causing some trouble. This thing's causing trouble. Instead of like focusing on this issue, let me focus on a solution over here. I've got a friend. Let me support this person better. I got this other business. Let me put more energy into this person's business over here. How can we be creators and builders? And that's really worked well for us. Is just like investing in people, investing in other companies, investing in opportunities, and trying to look for that. I think too often when you get in like little communities, it doesn't matter if you're in a tiny little search and rescue team. It doesn't matter like if you're in a little motorcycle club or something. It always gets persnickety, right? It always gets weird in there. And I just have no patience for that. I don't have time for it. And like zero patience, not to the point where I'm gonna like stop being persnickety. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna remove myself from that thing. My life is so damn short. I'm gonna go over here and work on this thing. So always looking for ways to be moving forward in a positive direction, and see how. And I think my final little bumper sticker thing is when it comes to community and when it comes to business fest. And probably Napoleon Hill or somebody said this, but if you want to be successful, help as many other people as you possibly can be successful. That's it.
What about you, John?
I don't think I do a good job of it. Huge social media. Everybody wants to be part of it. The most common thing is, hey, I want to come hang out with you. I don't hang out. Like I work all the time. When I say I work 18 hours a day, I actually work 18 hours a day. So that's kind of off-putting. Dudes show up here. I'll always take, 30 minutes, an hour, talk to you, whatever. I don't know what they walk away with. We do self-reliance festivals, so people come in and see the space. I think we consume a lot of content, so we have this perception of how people are. So when we open this place up and we do self-reliance festival, we'll have people here for a week everywhere on the property, right? So we don't edit or cut anything out. I think we do a pretty good job of making it real. So when you come here, that's exactly what it was. But I think I'm kind of a recluse, really. I will definitely talk to people and yell at people and a lot of movement and a lot of energy online, but in person, people are like, what are you doing this weekend? Not whatever you're about to ask me to do. Like, I'm going to go and do my own thing. I don't tell anybody where we're going because people show up. I tell you what we did after it's over with. And I don't think that I do a good job at building community, really. My friend James Yeager did a really good job. Bob's building community and has people moving to Ohio, but I have not been really great at that. I am very focused. My stuff works because I do it, right? I'm lacking I'm lacking management and infrastructure within the business, right? My wife and I do all of that. And we just continue to do that. We have for 35 years. I've run my business, and that's just kind of what I do. I don't think I do a good job at building community, really, to be honest with you.
100% disagree with John about he is not good at building community. And this is why. What he is good at is investing his time carefully in people. Like the people he spends more time with are people who go off and produce something as a result of spending time with him. And if you don't do that, then he doesn't spend as much time with you. And because he does that, and people appreciate what has been invested in them time-wise, the people he attracts who keep coming back build community there. So, you've got Evan and Bob working on Homestead Apprentice, right? You've got me working on Self-Reliance Festival. I don't know everybody who's there because I'm not there as much as I'd like to be, but community does exist around John. And it's the kind of quality community that attracts doers instead of takers. Because when you're about a bunch of people doing stuff, and you're a taker, you don't stay there for very long because people expect you to pick up the shovel and start digging the swale eventually.
You're right. Actually, when you say it in that manner, right? Like Chuck Peoples comes in and has started a business. Evan came in, I'm going to start this thing. And I said, no, you're not. You're not ever going to do that. So he did, right? And those are if you want to be my friend, you are a business owner for the most part. And everybody doesn't have to be an entrepreneur. You can be an intrapreneur. Like every great entrepreneur needs a good second. And there's a lot of dudes that think they want to run a business, whereas really they would actually make a lot more money being a good second in another business, right? Everybody's not really cut out. People think that they want to do that until it comes down to you have to do this thing and you're going to be up 48 hours. And then that kind of changes. Or it's your house that is leveraged against this project. People that take really big risks get really big rewards, and some that fails. Like guys that take big risks fail often. You don't hear it because when they succeed, the success is so great. I guess I believe that everybody's contagious, and I'm very careful what I'm going to catch from everybody. Like it's the wireless charging thing. I can take a 50% dude, and I run at a normal guy's 100%. I'm running at 150% of normal people. I can take a 50% guy and bring him up to 75, but it draws me down to 75. And I'm willing to do that a couple of times. But once we've had the conversation, I feel like most people that have the conversation come back and then the same thing and the same thing and the same thing. And I just remove access. You get 3 chances, but really you get 2. The first time you're going to ask me, and I don't ever tell you what you should do. I would tell you what I would do. And if you do that and you come back the second time and there's progress, we're good. If you come back the second time and there's not any progress, we're absolutely done. Yeah,
go ahead.
No, that's
I was going to say, I'm going to take this question literally too. So in our sort of agorist freedom networks, there's a lot of focus on finding your community, building your intentional community, working together so that you can cover more things. And I think that's great. But I also think many times if you go into a physical intentional community with the intention of building the physical intentional community, you can get yourself into a lot of hot water very quickly. So I do happen to live in a neighborhood called, my farm is the Holler Homestead, and we call ourselves the Holler Neighbors, where all of my next door neighbors treat each other like family in many ways. Like Sunday, my sheep were out and I was able to hop on the CB radio and say basically, hey, I need somebody over here with a 4x4 to help chase these back because we got 2 4-wheelers over here and we need a third. And somebody was ready to come out their door on a Sunday morning at 9 a.m. And that is a hugely powerful neighborhood situation to have. And we do communal meals. And if I go out of town and T is not here, then we've got people next door who know how things work here who can help out. And people see that and want to know how I can have that. And did social media help? absolutely would have never happened had I not started my podcast 7 years ago and started telling my story. I was alone here 7 years ago. And it was just because I tried on the podcast to share my failures and my successes in a way that's genuine to who I am, so that when you meet me, you don't think, well, who's this other person than who I've been following for all this time? And because of that, people got to know me in person at events like Self-Reliance Festival, or like the spring workshop we do here, or the processing workshops we do here. And once they got to know me and I got to know them, and we'd been through a couple of hard things together, and I could see what they were like in a crisis, when places came up for sale or rent nearby, I'm like, this person wants to live near me. And then I was able to recruit. And that happened over many years. That happened over 7 years. It took, I think I was 4 years in on the podcast when people started moving here. And so social media absolutely helped, but without that in person, it never would have happened.
You're not really using CB radios, are you?
It's a Zello app on the phone that
I know.
Explain it is that no, but I need Evan to come do a radio thing.
I know Evan's typing right now.
He and I are already in conversations because I'm not happy with just Zello. I need something that works all the time. So
man, I don't know what kind of business you could do with them, but man, I would co-sign Radio Made Easy, Homestead, Kiri, all these people here. Those are all people that we do business with. And if you ever find yourself in a capacity where you need to do comms gear or alternative medicine stuff and soaps and salsas and stuff like that, that's Kiri. Medical kits, that's Homestead. Medical radio stuff is Radio Made Easy. And if you ever find yourself just needing those products, man, I will put you in touch with those guys for sure. That's to you.
To me? You're not talking to me, right?
Yeah. No, I'm talking to you.
No, I already know that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Those guys all set up. We've watched them start their business, day one businesses over the last several years. And those guys are all sponsors and vendors, and they're all around our communities.
Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate that. Well, I gotta do the other thing this whole deal and start running the business a little bit for today. I got some stuff.
Well, let's go once around the horn. Just summarize like how people can get in contact with you, do business with you, find out more.
Go to the website, and if you go to the website, we'll find you. We'll find you afterwards on your social medias, but wazoogear.com. And probably the most active thing these days is going to be Instagram. We're turning out some we have a JJ's doing great stuff on TikTok. He's doing some fun videos on there. Mostly Instagram is probably the thing that I'm getting back to updating, and that's just I think Wazoo Gear Co. at Wazoo Gear Co. But I just stick with Instagram, and our email is getting a lot sexier these days. We're doing a pretty good job. I just wrote a blog this last week all about Technora. Spent hours on explaining the nuances of why we chose this little fancy rope for our kits. And so if you sign up for like our email list, it's not just like some boring get 15% off. It's like we're actually churning out some pretty cool, interesting stuff. So if you go to our website and you sign up there, and then you'll probably also get nudged for a discount or something too if you want to buy. But those are the main things. Instagram on the Instagram for the socials, and websites wazoogear.com.
Wazoogear.com.
Constant Contact or MailChimp, or what are you using for your email?
Klaviyo.
What is it?
Klaviyo.
We will check that out, man.
Yeah, none of us are happy with our email stuff.
Way more data driven, way more data driven, way more intricate flows and everything. If we used to do MailChimp, and it's just Klaviyo is just a little more powerful.
Nice. Perfect.
Awesome.
That in itself is worth just that sentence right there. I'm John Willis, Special Operations Equipment. I do a live video every single night at 9:00 on my YouTube channel, every single day of the year. So if you like this conversation, join in, and our conversations in the evening are driven by what you guys want to talk about. SOE Tactical Gear is my website, and you can find me everywhere as SOE Tactical Gear, all social media platforms.
Awesome.
I guess I do have one other thing. This a friend called me out on this. He's blown up now, but it's old Chad Wright. He was Navy SEAL, and he runs marathons and stuff these days, or ultra marathons. But
we know Chad, right?
You know Chad? Okay. We were hosting one of the little community events, and this was before I had my own personal Instagram, and Chad was like, Dustin, you need your own personal, you got to build your brand. And so I went home that day and I did my own. So if you want to follow me personally too, I know that's a personal brand. Like John, you are such a personal brand. Is important too. And undercover.influencer is currently the handle on Instagram if you want to follow.
Awesome. That's a good one.
Undercover.influencer. All right, guys, go check that out. Well, I'm Nicole Sauce from the Living Free in Tennessee podcast, and I do the Self-Reliance Festival with John Willis. We've got early bird pricing through Friday at selfreliancefestival.com. Dustin, you have an open invitation to come at any time. We do 2 a year. I'll shoot you some info about that. And of course, if you want delicious, freshly roasted to order coffee, check out hollowroast.com and I'll get you set up. Guys, we'll see you next week.